and welcome indeed to the Sprocket Pod. I am so excited for this episode, first episode of the new year. Mark and I back together, and we have an awesome guest on, Klemen with Celestial. Welcome to the show. Hey, Klemen, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, you and I met just prior to the end of the year, and we talked a little bit about what this episode could look like. And I was really captivated in the conversations that we were planning it because as you of course know, are building Celestial, which is a really exciting app for the HubSpot ecosystem, and that's something we're going to dig into. But for those who aren't familiar, tell everyone a little bit about how you got into the HubSpot ecosystem and what you're building for us HubSpot enthusiasts.
Yeah, definitely happy to walk you through. I'm Klemen Hrovat, co-founder at Celestial. We started the whole idea about a year ago. I've been actually using HubSpot as a free CRM part for the past 10 years, but always as a founder just to manage the deals as an overview. But as an idea from the previous lead gen agency company, we thought, okay, let's build something on top of HubSpot. And so that's why when I started really digging into the community, HubSpot, a lot of features, last year for me was really, I would say the learning curve was just enormous. It was my first time going to inbound. I talked with a lot of HubSpot experts, enthusiasts. I'm super excited to be part of that community. It's really supportive and that is encouraging us. And just before New Year, we made a pivot from having a sales assistant for salespeople on top of HubSpot into building a system for sequences,
What was the impetus for the pivot?
traction or lack of it. But more importantly, the realization that if we want to automate email communication outside of HubSpot or email client, Gmail, Outlook, or whatever you have, it's a huge ask from a new tool for every salesperson. You should do 50% or 70% of your email communication outside of where you are used to. As well as we made, I would say, a somewhat wrong assumption that every salesperson has a lot of one-on-one follow-ups that you need to do on a daily basis. If you have 5, you don't appreciate that much the automation of that. And at some point, one of the users asked, why don't you bring that level of personalization to sequences where the volume happens? So further up in the funnel, where you have webinars, events, form submissions, and when you want to be personalized, but you don't have the luxury of doing that one-on-one.
Yeah. So your learning curve when you went to inbound, was it mostly learning from the community, seeing where people were having friction or pain points, and then deciding where you would, or was it the other way? You had an idea and you wanted to get feedback from the community.
I mean, my initial idea with Inbound was on one side to finally meet with all the people I met over Zoom prior to Inbound. It was really good to just catch up with each and everyone. And because I was wearing that, the ones who were there, you saw me, that alien behind me. At some point, I realized,
For the
okay,
folks at home, let's just say he was very hard to miss at inbound.
yeah. So that my buddy, I didn't pay him as much as he helped me, but at some point, no, people were stopping by. I haven't waved to so many kids on WhatsApp ever going to sleep. People were just stopping, and so I took that opportunity and said, okay, let's just jump in. Let's use that as an excuse. Everyone who smiles at me, I can just say hi. So I was just networking there, and then catching up with more deep dive communications after inbound.
For those who didn't have the opportunity to see it, it was very on brand, being dressed as an alien, having the company Celestial. Kudos for standing out in what is typically a sea of orange. Being able to stand out goes a long way. As far as Celestial goes, for those who aren't familiar, as you mentioned, it is an app that's intended to help with automating the personalization of sequences, asking reps to send 50 emails, even if they only have to click send and then personalize 1 or 2 tokens, that time adds up. So you're taking personalization, bringing it to the masses. And in order, I think, for someone to really appreciate what Celestial does for reps and for HubSpot users, I'm really keen to hear your thoughts on what makes for a good sequence. What even makes
Re-
a sequence in HubSpot?
yeah, really good question. From my experience, you need to have a clear goal of what you want to achieve with the sequence. A pre-webinar sequence works really well, or post-webinar sequence, or post-form submission for different forms is a good use of sequence. And within the sequence, have a clear call to action. Otherwise, you won't see the people doing what you want. And it definitely should be relevant and as specific as possible. From what I'm seeing, still the standard approach with sequences is, if we talk about automated emails, it's having a templated email with 1-2 personalization tokens, obviously first name, but beyond that, maybe 1 or 2, sometimes more complex, sometimes more trivial, like job title or company name, which still means you're sending the same message to each and every persona. Where I think with all the challenges around email deliverability, how hard it is to generate new leads, will all need to be way more personalized in every communication. Every templated email that you send to a contact out of your HubSpot is giving them an opportunity to click and unsubscribe, and you don't want to go into that path. So as I'm seeing, and I've been talking to 15 sales leaders in December only, where they all said the same: we want to increase the personalization within sequences because we feel we're just missing on a good opportunity there.
We've been seeing a lot of applications when it comes to taking artificial intelligence and then using that to create quality content. And I think one of the common things that, Mark, I know you have experience with, since I know you are very proficient with using AI yourself, is you'll get out of artificial intelligence what you put into it, which means that I would be willing to bet there is a hell of a prompt that is used to generate this. So what actually goes into making Celestial work as it's intended to work?
Yeah, I like to say, and I think it's still true, garbage in, garbage out with AI. If you just go to ChatGPT and ask, write me a really good sequence for my post-webinar follow-up, don't expect a miracle. You'll get a sequence, but it will be far from optimal. Especially with O1 model, what is really interesting is it really obeys what you say. For O even, is still clunky in that sense. But with O1, if you once in a prompt say, I don't want to have you open the email with, I hope this email finds you well, you won't see that at all. Which means every instruction you give in a prompt will be appreciated, which means you can really narrowly navigate how to write every email. What we are now doing with our system is we would give you the full prompt, and this is for every email that we write for you. It's an 8 pages long Google Doc prompt.
Wow.
So we can really specify narrowly. We can, and we want to help you unlock the creativity, so you can tweak the prompt with AI on top of it until you're really satisfied with the tone of voice. Until if you give to O1 model the whole 8 pages long prompt and say, okay, this is my current prompt, and it feels it's too AI-ish still, or the subject line is 6 words too long, what do I need to do? Please suggest me how to change the prompt. And you get a really good suggestion. So you don't need to understand the full prompt in detail or learn it by heart, but you can use AI to guide through that prompt and iterate really quickly. You click run, you see the output, you go back, you iterate. And because you have that long prompt that is fully appreciated for writing the email, you can get to the voice and not let AI flatten your voice and really find the consistent output that you want. And by that, you then start trusting AI as you see it works.
Yeah, so a little bit of behind the curtain. I would say like maybe a year ago, something like that. We were working on a project to do, our sales team was going to start doing outbound or do more outbound. And I said, hey, we should try to automate some of this. And so I built this whole thing with Airtable and prompts and dynamically pulling different things. And it got so convoluted, but I never was able to get it to not sound like AI. the more I reinforced with the prompt, the more kind of rigid the output was. So it got rid of that kind of creativity. But if I wasn't rigid, it would start sounding using metaphors about symphonies and just like the very quintessential AI giveaways that we all know now.
Yeah.
And I never figured out, that's always been the biggest challenge, is getting it to sound human. And I've actually given up on trying because it was like such a frustrating thing. So I don't know, have you found the kind of secret that I'm missing? Have models just gotten better? What is it?
The models definitely got better. O1 is really much better than 4.0. We tried the same prompt with 4.0 and O1, and we generated the whole sequence for 10 different contacts. Every email is more or less the same with 4.0. With O1, you get that creativity that you asked, for example. So the quality of the output is definitely different. An interesting exercise everyone can do is ask AI, what are those phrases? Tell you this is AI-ish generated, and then include those phrases in a prompt to say, don't include those phrases because they sound AI-ish when you generate an email. And then through that, you get to less AI sounding emails. I've been now using those kind of emails, even within the previous version of Celestial. And always the response from people was, oh, you made me laugh. That is a really good email. No one said, okay, this is AI email. It doesn't sound right. So the feedback is always positive. Of course, it's not probably not what you could come up with if you sit down and spend an hour for one person, but what's the alternative? And if we're talking about a scale of hundreds of people that you want to follow up after a webinar, for example, if you get close enough that the response rate goes 3x up, you will probably take into consideration, say, okay, it's fine if it sounds a bit AI-ish, if I'm still getting much better results.
Yeah.
This opens, I think, probably the number one question that both admin and executives are going to find themselves asking at this point in the conversation, which is, should my sales reps be writing their own sequences, or should I be using an app like Celestial to plug and play and write content for them?
Short answer is it depends. Long answer is how much time do we have? It can probably go for hours, the whole discussion. From what I've been seeing and talking is, especially within smaller companies, it often falls down to sales reps doing their own sequence, writing their own messages. It's less structured, less already guided by marketing. Where on one side now you risk that sales rep might not be the most proficient email copywriter. So you might be missing some of the tricks that you can use within emails. Within bigger companies, marketing is often then involved. But one thing to keep in mind is marketing is thinking from one-to-many communication. When sequences, as I see them, is really for one-on-one communication, for salespeople typically to use it. So whenever you are about to write a sequence, keep in mind that the idea is you have one-on-one communication with someone. So don't go that path of marketing looking emails. It should be really personalized. And with the idea of Celestial, where you are working on a prompt, on a generator, not writing every email as a template, sales and marketing team can work together on finding the sweet spot of the voice, of the style of the emails. And then you're generating for each and every one a unique email anyway. And in that case, you can still have sales reps reviewing the output of AI, if you will, but the consistency and the tone of voice and on-brand tone of voice is ensured by the collaborative approach on a prompt that you're managing.
You mentioned it depends, which I think is always the right answer for probably all of the questions that we ask in this show, but especially if a company is larger and more established and they have a marketing team where they can allow the ability and resources that create enforced content, right? The marketing team creates the content and then they require the sales team to use it. I don't think that's a bad thing, especially if you have data to say the formula we've created works. whereas a smaller company is definitely going to want to lean into, especially an app like Celestial, where you have maybe you don't have a marketing team, but you still want that consistent voice and call artificial intelligence your marketing department at that point, maybe, but now at least you have a unified app or a unified voice creating that content.
Yeah, within the prompt, you can feed a lot of your marketing verbiage. We also suggest having value proposition per persona being fitted into, so that if we're talking about post-webinar follow-up, if you have in the same webinar CFO and low-level business analyst attending a webinar, you don't want to send the same message to C-level executive and to low-level BI analyst. So let AI match parts of webinar with value propositions for these personas and have email written for CFO with a slightly different point of view approach compared to different personas in those companies.
And you've talked about using this, especially, for example, after a webinar. I mean, you could do it after any event, but what I'm curious of is, are you able to take, say, the transcript of the webinar, feed that into the prompt, and then use that as a guideline for the topic? So you feed it the transcript and then say, okay, persona A is an executive, persona B is a business analyst. Based on the transcript of the webinar, create content that is relevant to either of the personas using the transcript.
Yeah, that's the idea. So that within that mega prompt, of course, it's too costly to give the whole transcript for every prompt. It would be probably 20, 30 pages long prompt, and I'm not sure anyone has that money to spend for emails. So what we do is take a transcript, make a summary, and by making a summary, we already consider different personas that are attending that webinar. So you have highlights for different personas already prepared within the summary, and then that summary is fed into that mega prompt that we then use to craft messages for different personas.
That's not only helpful, but it definitely is something that, again, brings uniformity to companies, because I've worked at larger organizations myself and I've worked at smaller ones. And so, having done sales, I've personally experienced companies where they empower us or me to write our own content. And then I've seen organizations where they have content that's pre-created. And I can definitely say that being in sales, anything you can do to focus on the selling part of your job as opposed to writing an email, I think 9 out of 10 sales reps are going to lean into that. I know that it's definitely something that, from a day-to-day perspective, I think sales reps definitely appreciate anything that has them avoiding sitting there typing away at their keyboard.
Maybe another thing to mention at this point is what we try to do is, and we already do, is not only we take that prompt of a webinar summary and value proposition for personas, we already take the activity timeline from HubSpot into a prompt. If you have a summary of a recent call that you have with that person a week before the webinar, that context summary will be already included. All the previous emails, you can link into a prompt any relevant contact company deal properties. If you have a property that says what was the latest PDF they downloaded on your website, that can be as a context to consider AI how to write the angle. Lifecycle stage can be brought in. The information, if there is an open deal or if there is already a closed won deal on that company or with that prospect, all that context can be per sequence brought into, and then for every contact before writing an email, that whole context from HubSpot is automatically used and considered. So that in that case, now emails can really relate to the relationship you already have with each and everyone.
Curious to hear thoughts from both of you on leveraging. I think the terminology here, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it's uncontextualized data. So if you look at emails, it's hard to look at an email and quantifiably bring data out of it. If you have 20 different email exchanges over a month, what can you do with that in HubSpot? And I think that's one of the big unknowns that I know CRMs, HubSpot included, are working to figure out, is how do we make something actionable and usable based on this. And it sounds like that's part of what Celestial is able to do is, okay, you've got 50 emails, summarize them and then use that. But what are trends that you two are seeing when it comes to using this uncontextualized data, whether it's emails or call transcripts?
Yeah, I don't know if it's considered a trend because it's been going on for a bit, but there's the concept of using kind of vector databases to store context in a contextual way so that you can retrieve it. It essentially allows you to train the model without actually having to train it. If I had to try to describe what a vector database is, I've had 100 people try to describe it to me. Something about 3 dimensions. Once there's more than 2 dimensions, I don't understand, but it works. And therefore it lets you conduct a search on those things and have greater context. And I also think knowledge graphs, I don't know, Klemen, where you land on that?
Taking into consideration the whole thread for a month, the most juicy part that you want to relate to is within the latest 5 email exchanged. In general, of all that uncontextualized data, what we also been playing around is, what if we take every email that you sent as a sales rep in the past 5 months and we add that to AI to say, okay, use that to find my voice. This is a task you can do. Or go through all my emails and compile FAQ file for me. So what I've been asked recently for the past 5 months and what are my answers. And then I go back to my marketing team. Hey, this is what I'm answering to the questions I'm getting over the email or on a call. Is that right? Should I do better? How can I do better? Summarizing all that, I think, is the first step that you should be doing and considering. And then with those summaries, further feed them into prompting.
It's really interesting seeing how narrow we can continue to get with artificial intelligence, especially just when you consider we were having conversations a year ago about what ChatGPT could do at the time, and I know that it was very interesting, but it wasn't as functional as what we're able to do now, where the concept of saying, "Hey, these are all of the emails that I've sent within the past time period, 90 days," right? Use this to define my voice and then write new content based on that. It's impressive to me to see how it continues to build one thing on top of another. And I know, Clement, this is totally your world. Where do you see not only Celestial, but just AI continuing to evolve as it gets more and more involved with sales reps?
Tough question.
Will there actually be sales reps?
I think there'll still be sales reps. It feels in a way we're going back to pre-AI era where we really appreciated all the real human relationship more and more. On a short term, as I say this, the ones who will adapt and use AI will have advantage for some time. You can now write really good personalized email with AI at scale that doesn't sound a generated email. And by that, you can have better conversions, better relationship built. At some point, that will become a standard. So, it will need to be some other angle how you use and leverage AI. But I think there will for sure be room for salespeople to stay in job. I think it's more of none of us should be afraid of playing around and leveraging AI and finding how you can use that power that you have for your advantage to help you optimize your work, automate repeatable tasks, automate admin work, automate whatever you can, automate research of an account before a meeting, being better prepared. I'm always so angry when I have the first call with someone and then I get to a demo and they're asking me the same questions. Or first I have a call with SDR and then I have a call with AE. And they never talked. I already spent 30 minutes talking to your colleague, answering the exact same questions. That shouldn't happen. You have all the power. You ask AI you have AI summaries now for every meeting, basically. You should use that. Otherwise, you're just you'll be left behind.
I'm really curious to hear both of you with your thoughts on. I know there was the company that recently ran an ad campaign for AI SDRs, and the campaign was something to the effect of hire your team, you don't need humans, hire us instead. And the notion that, okay, the AI SDR, which is growing and evolving, and some companies I've seen have used it successfully and some not at all. But how do you two feel about AI SDRs and really AI agents truly taking over for some of these very human roles?
I think that's definitely a marketing play to make that statement. I know the CEO of Salesforce recently said they're not hiring any new developers. They're just going to be using AI, which is, I think, BS. But again, he's just trying to get coverage, and he did. So they're just trying to be risque. That's so I don't think, as far as I know, I don't think there are any AI SDRs that could out in the market today. And maybe the people in the comments arguing about it right now, but that could really take over a full SDR team. I think that every agent, every AI tool is a way for a human to make themselves more productive that we have today. I have yet to see fully autonomous that can be done. Like maybe it can do one or two tasks autonomously correctly, but over enough iterations, there'll be too many mistakes. It's just not, you can't let them go on autopilot, at least in my experience. I don't know if that's how your experience.
I would agree with that. I don't think it's there yet to be fully autonomous. And on a long run, I always see it as it will be AI supported, empowered, but human guided or navigated. It all goes into do much, much more with less people. And that will be the trend. Nowadays, I don't see companies hiring a lot of SDRs anymore. You have so many tools that you can, with the existing team, optimize the workflow, automate stuff, but still you need to have human beings navigating the system, taking a look and here and there. So it's still on the goal, on the path that you envision. You need to navigate, you need to iterate. Creativity of the best salespeople is what can now be expanded on a much more wider amount of accounts with all the AI, with all the tools. So it will be doing much more with less human beings on a team. But as I said, I think salespeople will need to be there.
I think one of the unknowns that I don't know what it's going to look like, but I'm excited to see over the next year because I'm sure we're going to see a lot of this, is how companies connect dots that humans can connect, but maybe we don't know how we're connecting those dots. And so an example of that might be if I, as a RevOps analyst, am looking at data points in the company, I don't always know how and why I'm connecting certain data points. Sometimes there's a little trial and error, and I go and I look at different pieces of data and I look for correlation, and eventually we're able to tell a story. But it's not always, okay, in every company, I'm going to look at this data point, I'm going to look at this data point, the two are related, and here's what they mean, because every company is different. And certainly there are some consistencies, but again, every company is different, which is what makes revenue operations such a coveted role across organizations. And so I know that there are a ton of apps working toward this. I know HubSpot is working to bring a lot of this type of, again, contextualization of data native to the CRM. But boy, if artificial intelligence can figure out how to connect those dots, I don't want to say we'll be in trouble because I still think that there's going to be that human element of the role for interpretation and figuring out what do we do with this data, but it definitely is going to be a huge step for data analysis and those of us who right now are very integrated with learning how to interpret what HubSpot is telling us or what any CRM is telling us. I don't know what that's going to look like, but I think it's coming.
It is. Even
Pattern matching, so it's definitely coming.
And for your own experienced eye, you can only digest and keep in mind only that much amount of data. Where if you're thinking about having, I don't know, 100,000 contacts in HubSpot, and half of them are visiting your website in the past half of a year, there's no way you can analyze that, no matter how many workflows and everything you have within HubSpot. One idea we've been playing around recently internally was, will be HubSpot or any additional tool on top of HubSpot at any point be able to just monitor what's happening with all the context, with all the activity timelines, and say, hey, there's a segment of 50 contacts that are having the same pattern to your recently closed deal. You should focus on those because of all that information that you have no idea exists. They're on the same path there. Now, I don't know of any tool that can help, but for that, but I see that a plausible case for AI in a year or 2 years. There's really a lot of data within any CRM.
It's pattern matching. Like, it reminds me of the stock analysis machine learning that they do, where they look for signals that humans wouldn't even know, like the correlations between this announcement in this part of Europe and like the sugarcane yield in South America or whatever, that we don't know about. But if they happen at the same time and you look historically, it has this impact. Apply that to the historical data of a CRM, and then as it compares to ongoing stuff, it seems that's definitely coming. If you're familiar with this company, Renaissance Technology, from back in the day, they were the first people that basically invented machine learning and AI. They had an automated trading system that read signals across the market. That fund is up like millions of %. They don't let anyone buy in because if it gets too big, it moves markets as they trade. But you should look into it. They figured out how to beat the market, looking for those signals. So I think it's coming.
And it goes back to the fact that I'm sure there are things that we can learn about ourselves, we being just how humans think, because I would say that there are definitely patterns that I don't know always how I'm finding them, but eventually you learn to recognize it. And it would be really interesting to have an app or program that can find the pattern and then tell me, I found this pattern, here's how I found it and why. As opposed to me saying, I found this interesting piece of data that seems correlated. Here's the story it's telling, but now I actually have a resource that's telling me why, and then we can figure out how to action on it. I can say, after having spoken with some members of the product team at HubSpot, I don't know how far off they are from making all of this reality, but I know that these are things that HubSpot's working toward, which is really interesting to see because we're not far off from being in a world where someone logs into HubSpot and they pull up a company and it says XYZ piece of information about contacts, deals, custom objects, and it's giving you contextualized data based off of everything that it has in the CRM. So, man, it's really,
as I see it, every human being will always tend to make the connection between the dots. I didn't just make, I would say, a biased conclusion of something that you see, where the system can be much more objective to the data that you get, and then and can take a broader look at what you have. And I think this is a huge opportunity, because we too often make, based on gut feeling, assumption, or because I know I've seen that so many times, that must be the same signal, but it might not be. You're just making the reasoning behind it, where the system can always take a look at the same objective point of view and maybe provide a different point of view.
when it comes to organizations and companies that want to leverage artificial intelligence, if there's someone internally who's a champion, then oftentimes they're the ones driving it forward. But I know a lot of companies that are wanting to leverage AI, but they're scared to really figure out how to embrace it. We sit here and we talk about things like prompts, machine learning, and I think that for executives that are like, I just want my people to sell more, it can seem daunting. So, what advice do you have to executives or business leaders and owners who want to start to look at apps and programs that are involved with AI, but maybe they're a little afraid to figure out where to even get started?
Mark, you want to take?
Oh,
Go take a look at Celestial. That is the correct answer.
so I don't know, this might be a little bit more than the beginners, but the thing that's really just blown my mind lately is there something called v0.dev. It is by Vercel, and it's really for building front-end applications. And you can describe something and just watch it build it. You can feed it Figma designs, and it will build it into code like perfectly, and then you can just export it. It's really great for front-end, and it's shockingly good. And I haven't had that wow WTF moment since the first time I used ChatGPT as I went using. This is like generative AI that it generates modules and code and designs as opposed to just text. And I think that's the next frontier.
And yeah, from the executive top management perspective, I think what you want to do is just empower and embrace people to play around with AI. Don't be afraid. Let them find a case. Let them first think from the problem, or where you're spending time or wasting time, or where everyone feels they can do better, and start from the challenge or the problem. It might not even be the AI that's helping you. Maybe AI is just part of it. But especially with AI developing so quickly, I think it will need to be embraced and pushed from top management down, that we should be taking a look at new tools, at new approaches. If you use ChatGPT 3.5 and you didn't find it useful, you know how much changed since then. You should take a look at every new model that is released, basically, because it's such a huge difference between one model and the another. So it is so quickly evolving that there's just no other way than embracing and encouraging people to try to use it, to play around, to find a case, and of course then see what's coming out of your efforts. If there are results, if you do better at a task, dig further how you can do better with that tool.
I think that it's really powerful to encourage people to play with it because you're not going to automate yourself out of a job. You certainly may help facilitate yourself in whatever role you have at whatever company you're at to become more efficient. But you're not going to automate your job away from AI. And if you do, then you are probably sitting on a very lucrative thing that you've stumbled across, whatever that may be. So I think that companies almost need to put a bounty on encouraging people to go out and just explore it, whether that's looking at apps like Celestial or encouraging people to play with ChatGPT or v0.dev, just encouraging your team members to go and make the time or find the time to play with all of these apps and programs. I think that goes a long way. And to flip it for those of you who are everyday HubSpot users or CRM users, be curious. Again, if you can save yourself time, maybe you're the one who's watching this and you find an app like Celestial and that helps your day be easier. Right? So it doesn't always have to come top down where the executive finds the app and then says, hey, let's use this. As a user, if you find something that helps your day to day be better, fantastic. Go explore that suggestion. I know that with the time that we have, I want to take a few moments though, Clement, because one of the rarities that actually I really want to dig into is the fact that you ran a study and you ran some tests behind the use case of your app and of using AI with email open rates and such. So oftentimes when we talk about things like using AI to write prompts and hopefully it saves time, a lot of times it can be theoretical, but you actually have numbers to back up the effectiveness and efficiency of what you've created.
Yeah. We on purpose made a pilot back in December for one of the users. So what we did, we took 300 webinar attendees that they wanted to enroll in a sequence for post-webinar, and we put 1/3 of those into a standard templated email sequence with first name as a personalization token. And then 2/3 we ran through Celestial to write the whole sequence for them, for each and every one, and roll them into a sequence. And the results were pretty interesting. So the open rate with Celestial emails, where every subject line is personalized, so every subject line is different for that recipient, increased for 1.5%. We saw 50% open rate for emails that we've written with Celestial. The response rate was 16% with emails written by Celestial compared to 5.6% on templated emails. Meeting rate was with templated emails, it was 1%. With our emails, it was 2%, so 2x in meeting rates. Of course, this is a set of 300 contacts being enrolled, so it's hard to argue that this is for sure the right data and statistically significant and so forth. But the difference is, I think, high enough, and the numbers are not that low. It's not 10 people, that it really encouraged us that there is something with those personalized emails. And the whole setup was done rather quickly. We set up everything probably with the same amount of time that you would write those 4 templated emails for a sequence, where you have here 1,000 emails being written, personalized for each and every recipient.
I think that, to your point, we can't sit here and argue the statistical significance of the data set, but what it does is it opens up a conversation that I think a lot of people are afraid to have, which is what happens if if it is truly more efficient to have non-uniform communications and allow that to be more effective. Because I think a lot of people can be scared by the fact that now my marketing team can't write one email template and just send it to everybody. The reality is we need artificial intelligence to create something that's tailored. And having that be more effective means, by definition, people want personalization, which means by definition, one person can't write 300 emails, doesn't scale well. But I think that opens up the conversation where people can be scared to allow artificial intelligence to take the reins on that. So it's really interesting to see that data. Mark, I'm curious because I know not only is DealHub done a wide variety of projects and you've done a wide variety of projects, but just in terms of racing AI over standardization, is that something that should marketing people be scared? Is that something companies should be embracing? What are your thoughts?
I don't think marketing people should be scared. I think marketing people should embrace it because it's coming anyway. So it's better to get ahead of it. I do think that, except for a few outliers, and maybe not even them, the larger a company is, the longer it's taking for them to embrace AI, I think, for a lot of the use cases. Like you hear about big companies are using AI for very specific use cases and it's helping them require less people, I say. But the larger a company, the less comfortable they are with the kind of experimentation with different AI tools and different AI strategies. I do think we're getting to a point now that everyone's has to get on board and is getting on board. And I don't think there's any company that isn't using AI at least a little bit in their email outreach. Even HubSpot built in AI functionality when you're writing emails, right? That's more kind of templated and not personalized on the individual level. But still, the AI is enriching every activity now. But I think that kind of one-to-one unique generated email is going to be table stakes. And so better get in front of it before it gets in front of you.
I don't want to promise something we can't deliver, but are you able to show a demo of what Celestia looks like, how it operates within HubSpot?
It's not there yet. We have MVP, which is a clunky where you need to play around with CSVs. For now, we are working on the second version of it. For now, it's just a functioning, but I'm happy to just give you a quick look at the prompt and everything, how it looks.
I'm getting ready to take a screenshot. So
we're not afraid to showing the prompt. Sorry. Okay. There are 2 parts of that prompt. The first one is default instructions, where you define the goal of the sequence, what should be done, what should be the ideal outcome, what should be a good outcome for AI to understand how to write it. We include a lot of rules about writing an email, how to write a subject line. And this is where you go back to your own tone of voice until you're satisfied with how emails look like. And then the other part is then the content. Here is a post-webinar case. You can include the webinar announcement to tell AI, okay, this is what people were sold on before they registered for a webinar. This is the summary. And it can be longer, of course. But as I mentioned, this is like takeaways for different personas, and then offering, describing the profile, describing the value proposition further per personas, so that you can let AI match that together in a most meaningful way. And then is bringing all the activity timeline information, additional information from LinkedIn. And we design a system in a way that you can easily include or exclude specific data sources. We had a case where we generated the first version of a sequence, and it sounded even cringy, spooky in a way, because it really focused too much on the recent LinkedIn post of a person. So you just go here, exclude that as data source, and then it will find some other connection between what you want to say to that persona. And that's how you can iterate for each and every different sequence, the way how you want to articulate what you're about to say. Bring in any additional lifecycle stage description. So again, AI can understand who is who, or bringing in additional context properties, scheduling links, additional blog posts that might be relevant for post webinars. And then within the instructions to AI, you can say, in the second email, please include one of those three based on which is more relevant blog post for that persona. And that's, again, how you can really narrowly navigate through that. The output of all that is a sequence of emails that you can review, improve, iterate. And once you have that, in a week, 2 weeks time, we'll have a version of a system where you just click push back to HubSpot, and we automatically push all that to context properties and roll context automatically into a sequence. And here you go.
I wish I could show you that Airtable I was talking about, because I think you probably thought it through a lot more, and I was throwing spaghetti against the wall, but it was very much the same idea, but it was back in G3.5 days. And so with that, the context, the context for the tokens for the prompt must be huge.
Yeah. So when you compile that prompt, as I said, it's 7 to 9 pages long prompt for every sequence that we generate.
Mm-hmm. And when there were some of them were like, if it's this persona, then show this. So that when the prompt is then shown, is it only showing for whatever the persona is writing for it in that iteration, or is it just sending all of it and letting the AI kind of figure it out?
For now, let AI be as smart as it seems to be, and let it figure out. For now, it works, but we'll definitely need to do a lot of experimentation and iteration of how to optimize the prompt. Probably not the whole 8 pages of the prompt are relevant. But yeah, for now, for the first version, let AI. And with O1, you can definitely do that. It's the reasoning and thinking part is really good. AI do know what to do.
Interesting. I've never used O1's API. I've been too scared to, but now I'm feeling like maybe I should.
Save a few $100 for trying it out, but it's definitely worth playing around. The difference is really enormous between 4.0 and 0.1.
And for those who want to try Celestial and get running with the app, how can they get started in terms of working with you, getting this plugged into HubSpot?
Talk to me first. We are now in private beta phase, so there's no sign up and you have it. So it's us hand holding you and walking you through the process, helping you find a good first sequence to try out for you to start playing around with the system. I'm definitely eager to help. And what we want now to avoid is helping with automation of 5 emails. So if you have 5 people to enroll in a sequence, let's maybe wait for a few months until we have a robust system where you can sign up and use it. But if we're talking about hundreds of people, that it's clearly not possible to do it manually. I think this is I welcome you to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to show you in more details how the system works and just set you up so you can see what it can do for you.
I heard it here. If you are interested in trying Celestial out, make sure you connect with Klemen on LinkedIn. We'll have his link in the show notes, so you're welcome to connect with him, send a message, and get started. For those of you who might be tuning in for the first time, make sure you check out our previous episodes on Spotify and YouTube. And if you're not already in the Sprocketeer Slack community, make sure you check that out. It is the largest independent community for HubSpot admin Klemen, thank you for joining on today as our guest. Mark, always a pleasure when we get to do these. And for those listening, Sprocket on.
Thank you for tuning in to the SprocketPod podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode with your co-hosts, Cameron Collins and Mark Lerner. Be sure to catch us live every week on LinkedIn, and don't forget to subscribe to our episodes on YouTube and Spotify. If you found this episode valuable, please leave a review and share it with others looking to get more from HubSpot. Until next time, keep driving success with your CRM, and as always, Sprocket on.